Hi, everyone. Good to see you again. I'm Anne-Marie Green.
I'm Vladimir Duthier. Thanks for joining us. President Trump is set to impose major new sanctions on Iran today. They're expected to target the country's military and oil revenue. The move comes after Iran downed the U.S. drone and attacked oil tankers in the Middle East.
Earlier, President Trump called out countries like China and Japan for not doing enough to protect their oil tankers in the region. He went on to tweet the U.S. request for Iran is very simple. No nuclear weapons and no further sponsoring of terror. Ben Tracy has the latest from the White House.
Well, the president does not seem to have a clearly defined red line, and that's likely because he's trying to give himself some room to maneuver here. As for those sanctions, the White House has not detailed exactly what they are, but they are expected to target Iran's Revolutionary Guard and its atomic agency. Meanwhile, the president is still talking quite tough.
I'm not looking for war. And if there is, it'll be obliteration like you've never seen before.
President Trump likes to taunt, but says he actually prefers to talk, offering to meet Iran's supreme leader without preconditions, except for this one.
You can't have nuclear weapons. And if you want to talk about it, good. Otherwise, you can live in a shattered economy for a long time to come.
Despite calling off a military strike last week, CBS News has learned the president did approve a cyber strike on Iranian computer systems for rocket and missile launches. But Mr. Trump acknowledges that some in his administration want an even tougher response, including National Security Advisor John Bolton, who issued this warning Sunday.
Neither Iran nor any other hostile actor should mistake U.S. prudence and discretion for weakness.
Iran is vowing to increase its stockpile of enriched uranium and could, as early as this week, exceed the limits created by the nuclear deal President Trump pulled out of last year.
The president said repeatedly we want a brighter future for the people of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
The administration's strategy is unclear, besides strangling Iran's economy with sanctions in hopes of getting a better deal.
We'll call it, let's make Iran great again.
For their part, Democrats are now accusing the president of trying to solve a crisis of his own making. Meanwhile, overnight, Iran said that those cyber attacks against it did not work, and they warned they could shoot down another U.S. drone. Vlad and Anne-Marie.
All right, Ben, thank you. So for more on this now, we want to bring in national security analyst and U.S. Army veteran Asha Castleberry. She's also a foreign policy professor at George Washington University. Thank you so much for joining us, Asha. So the U.S. has been increasing sanctions on Iran since withdrawing from the nuclear deal. When I heard about this threat for even more sanctions, I thought, is that actually going to make a difference? As I understand it, the sanctions are working. Their economy is already crippled. What else is there to do?
Well, it's part of their maximum pressure, I would say, so-called strategy that not only they want Iran to feel it militarily, but also through soft power in terms of economic sanctions. And the Trump administration is fully aware that they're going through a lot in terms of their economy, especially when it comes to high inflation, unemployment, and it's also to go against the idea of the Iran deal, because as a result of us being part of the Iran deal, that enabled them to have some sort of revenue coming towards their economy to generate employment, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Does it appear to you, Asha, that the United States has a coherent strategy when it comes to dealing with, for example, Iran? Because, and the reason I ask that is the strategy seems to be we wait for something, we see something, we react to something, but there isn't a plan long term. Now, when the president says, you know, keep Iran great or make Iran great or something along the lines of the tagline he uses for his own campaign here in the U.S., I understand what he's saying. He's trying to get them to the table. But is that what's going to bring Iran to the negotiating table? The president saying he wants to help make Iran great again.
Well, unlike the difference between like North Korea versus Iran is North Korea actually came to the table. I think with Iran, especially with the leadership under the Ayatollah, it's going to be very hard for Iran to come to the table because, you know, their doctrine is all about resisting United States power. So it's going to take a lot. But then again, you know, in terms of trying to actually get to them to the table, it may have to take for us to utilize utilize our partners to be able to bring them to the table, because right now we are not on the same page as our partners in terms of addressing Iranian aggression, especially along the Strait of Hormuz. So it's going to have to take some sort of multilateral effort to bring Iran to the table, and as of right now, we do not have that.
So how much of a challenge is that going to be? You know, the U.S. pulled out of this nuclear agreement against the wishes of the allies. The allies begged the U.S. not to do so. Now we hear the president criticizing Japan and other countries for not protecting their own China, for not protecting their own tariffs. I don't know if that's a way to sort of woo the allies to come back to the table when, you know, much like Iran has pointed out, everyone was at the table already and came to an agreement.
Well, I think right now we're seeing that the administration knows that, oh my God, we do need a comprehensive strategy that includes using our strategic partners. So as of now, you know, you're looking at Pompeo going to UAE and Saudi Arabia. Trump is trying to bring in Japan and China. They know that, well, in order to really be able to secure our interests or effectively address Iran, we have to utilize our partners. So you can tell based on prior to this month that there wasn't necessarily a comprehensive long-term strategy in terms of dealing with Iran. And right now the effort is, okay, bring in our alliances, put together some sort of coalition going against Iran. So
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates today. He's discussing the Iran situation with leaders there. The Washington Post reports that he seems more optimistic in dealing with another situation, North Korea. That country has nuclear weapons. And seems less optimistic in dealing with Iran, a country that does not have nuclear weapons. And I wonder where that is. And again, it goes back to, I guess, to my earlier question. The president often believes that, you know, he is the best negotiator. He is the one who can, you know, he invented the art of the deal. And if, as long as he gets into a room with the Ayatollahs and the leaders of Iran, they can hammer out a deal, much in the same way that he was able to get in a room with Kim Jong-un. Is that feasible?
Well, the problem is, right after when the United States withdrew from Iran, they took away the diplomatic communications piece to it, right? So now they don't have no diplomatic communications with Iran. That's why we were almost going into war with them not too long ago. Compared to North Korea, yes, we do have some sort of soft power going on in terms of communicating with them. So it's harder to control the situation when you're looking at it through that piece to it. But another thing, too, that's really important to note is that you right now need your strategic partners in place to support this. But when you look at Saudi Arabia and UAE, they're already overwhelmed with dealing with Yemen. We thought that the Yemen war would be over by now, but now they're contributing more to Yemen, and now you're creating this hot spot along the Strait of Hormuz. And, you know, of course, it's in their strategic interest to counter Iran, but then they're also going to be very overwhelmed. Oh my God, we got to deal with Syria, we have to deal with Yemen, we have to deal with other places. Now we're creating a hotter spot along the Strait of Hormuz. So of course they're going to they're going to tell the United States, we'll support you, but how much? Because in terms of contributions, they're pretty limited.
It is fascinating. I mean, you know, Iran, as you pointed out, Anne-Marie, it is clear, all reports are that these sanctions are working. The economy is being strangled. But one thing that hasn't changed is Iran's projections abroad, beyond its own borders. For example, in Yemen, for example, in Syria. They're still able to project military and assistance to the individuals and the groups that they have an allegiance to. So that hasn't changed. So that's kind of interesting as well. Asha Castleberry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.